Welcome to Feed Talks, the brand new video series of All About Feed. My name is Fabian Brocketer, Editor-in-Chief of Minchin International Publishers. In this episode of Feed Talks, we will delve into the subject of mycotoxins. Mycotoxins in animal feed are a big deal because even low levels can quietly wreck animal health, hurting immunity, growth, and even meat production. The danger is sneaky. Toxins often survive processing and can stack together, causing more damage than could be expected from a single source of contamination. Joining me in exploring the finesses of mycotoxins is Martin Minchin, Commercial Director at Alltech. Well, Martin, welcome to this episode of Feed Talks.
Thank you, Fabian. Good to be with you today.
We are talking about mycotoxins today, and as we all know, they are all around us in the world. Can you tell me more about the Alltech Annual Harvest Survey program?
Yeah, it's a program, I guess, that is a fundamental part of our overall mycotoxin management program. It's something we've been running for almost 15 years now, and it's grown and grown each year. We started primarily in Europe and the US, and we've expanded that into other regions, and we brought Canada into it, and we do a lot of work now in Asia as well. In its simplest form, it's essentially a summary of the harvest results in terms of what the mycotoxin risk is in new crop grain forage samples across those key growing regions. Over a period, I guess, between June and November, we collect over 2,000 grain and forage samples from Europe, from the US, and from Canada. And I think the key thing is here, as much as we generate mycotoxin contamination data, we really dig into that data to see what it means from a species risk perspective. So depending on what you're feeding or what you're producing feed for, we look at that data at that level, and then we're able to interpret and generate what we would call, a risk assessment at a species level. The feed industry likes it. Livestock producers like it on the basis that it's timely. The data is relevant, and using the data that we're able to produce and generate, they can make decisions going into the coming year based on what they're purchasing, where they're purchasing from, and then informing, I guess, quality control programs in terms of mycotoxin control as well.
Mm-hmm. And the analysis is mostly done on the raw materials, right?
Yeah, raw materials and randomized. That's, I guess, the strength of the program. There's no bias in it, and we report the results whether they're high risk or low risk, and obviously that changes across the years, but that's one of the key pieces of the program, randomized samples of raw materials.
Right. And the 2025 results are in. Can you give some sort of an overview from your perspective?
Yeah, as always, I guess, when we look at results, there's variations from year to year. No year is ever the same when it comes to mycotoxin prevalence. We're sitting in the US here at IPPE, so maybe we'll start there. The US is really interesting this year. We would have deemed it a pretty good growing season, and that's manifested in a bumper corn crop and a soya crop as well. So yields were really good, but actually in contrast, we would have seen the 2025 mycotoxin risk much higher compared to 2024. So that probably would have been one of the biggest surprises in the analysis this year. We would have expected good growing season, maybe not as much risk in terms of mycotoxins, but actually the data would say otherwise. Fusarium mycotoxins driving much of that risk, and again, the big one being deoxynivalenol or DON. It seems to be coming up year on year in terms of that real common mycotoxin, both in terms of prevalence, but then also, I guess, the potency and the risk associated with that. In the US, it's a big corn crop this year. There's a lot of grains in storage, so that will be something that we'll need to watch going forward. The harvest is a point in time, and grain typically won't get any better in terms of quality, so it's how you watch that across that storage period is going to be a key thing. The other maybe interesting piece in the US this year, we typically see a lot of mycotoxins, that eastern corridor, well known for mycotoxin risk. As you go further west this year, we would have seen an increased prevalence and an increased risk in mycotoxins. So interesting dynamics, and again, emphasizing no year is ever the same, and no year is predictable in terms of mycotoxins. If we go north to Canada, maybe a pretty similar picture compared to 2024, and corn will be driving a lot of the risk in Canada, and again a lot of that risk coming from DON or the oxynivalenol. Wheat and barley maybe lower risk, but again it's not a case of no risk. We can see low risk, but that doesn't mean no risk, and there's plenty of hotspots. So again, emphasizing, harvest is one point, but that testing, that ongoing testing is a key piece. Moving back to Europe, maybe reflecting, I guess, the past few years in general, we're continuing to see this north-south divide almost develop. This continuation of those, drought kind of conditions in southern Europe, really heat-driven conditions, and we're seeing that manifesting in a significant levels of aflatoxin risk, and primarily in corn. That's driving some real risk. You go further north, you're seeing probably more of a more temperate climate, and that's manifesting in maybe more fusarium mycotoxins in particular this year. Barley, really high risk, and it's funny. Barley and wheat, you would think maybe similar type of mycotoxin profile, but actually wheat on the lower side with mycotoxin risk this year. Barley, much higher risk. So interesting from a feeding perspective, depending on the species you're feeding and what you're purchasing. Barley, higher risk. So again, more testing on that this year. But that's in Europe. I guess that north-south divide continues to be apparent in the data. Temperate climate, a lot of fusarium mycotoxins up north, and then we move further south, we're into that drought-driven conditions that are manifesting in the aflatoxin risk.
And this is all data already in the pocket, but any predictions for the 2026 growing season?
Yeah, we never stop looking at that, and mycotoxin risk is continual, and the data, we're always looking to see what's happening next. We hosted our Global Harvest broadcast 2 weeks ago. We had a meteorologist on there, Dr. Jan Dutton, and it was fascinating to see him predicting the development of an El Nino this year. We're coming out of a La Nina period, moving into El Nino. That will be predicted. If that plays out as expected, we're going to see warmer and wetter conditions across the year. So that's going to have a different impact again compared to what we would have seen this year. So that's going to take some planning. Not fully certain yet how that will play out, but certainly that's on the horizon, an El Nino, and that's going to certainly have an influence on crop yield and crop quality.
And a different dynamic as this year.
Absolutely, and that's a continuation of what we see year on year, and the harvest analysis, no 2 years are ever the same.
But how's Alltech responding to the trends in mycotoxin presence with nutritional strategies?
This type of, I guess, sort of surveillance data in general for almost 3 decades in terms of how we've been mitigating the mycotoxin risk. It's been central to informing how we put forward nutritional solutions, mycotoxin mitigation strategies. And I think the big thing that keeps coming through is that mycotoxins, they don't occur in isolation. We continue to see this multiple mycotoxin risk, and that's our technology will be primarily designed to address that. We see synergistic risk depending on the mycotoxins that are present as well. And then I think over the past, few years, our R&D team, our innovation team, really focused on how we can address this growing challenge of DON across all regions. The data that we're seeing both an increased prevalence of DON, but also at higher levels of DON year on year. So R&D team, we're seeing some exciting developments in terms of how we could get a bit more targeted around the control of DON. We've launched some new technologies on the back of that, and we'll be excited to continue to roll them out this year. But absolutely, data such as this, absolutely fundamental, I guess, to informing how we continue to evolve our mycotoxin management program and our mycotoxin control program, and some exciting developments in the area of nutritional solutions, in particular around that DON and fusaric acid, as we know that in terms of synergistic effects, those are two that would be really one that would be front of mind for livestock producers.
So a lot of data points and also solutions out there. Are those resources available for the broader feed industry, and where?
For sure. I guess first and foremost right now, we're wrapping up our regional reports from this year's harvest analysis. We produced our Global Harvest broadcast 2 weeks ago. Please visit alltech.com/harvest analysis. You'll find all of the reports, you'll find all of the data, you'll find the recordings, and then there'll also be resources in terms of mycotoxin control and the strategies explained to deal with, I guess, what the risk is from this year's harvest.
Thanks, Martin, for explaining the current state of mycotoxins in the world.
Thank you.
And of course pointing us in the direction for more resources and solutions. For more information on mycotoxins and other feed-related subjects, keep an eye out for the next episode of Feed Talks on All About Feed website and of course on our social channels.